I cried last night without noise. I cried last night when silence spoke. I cried last night holding thoughts close. I cried last night remembering words unsaid. I cried last night when calm broke. I cried last night counting breaths slow. I cried last night under quiet stars. I cried last night feeling weight inside. I cried last night when patience tired. I cried last night missing clarity, lost. I cried last night seeking answers, soft. I cried last night for moments missed. I cried last night for trust shaken. I cried last night for peace broken. I cried last night for love tested. I cried last night for hope delayed. I cried last night for promises heavy. I cried last night for distance grown. I cried last night for silence long. I cried last night for strength needed. I cried last night for truth hidden. I cried last night for patience thin. I cried last night for calm missing. I cried last night for faith wavering. I cried last night, then breathed slow. I cried last night and waited. Still I cried last night while memories returned. I cried last night when courage slipped. I cried last night holding silence tight. I cried last night listening heartbeat slow. I cried last night for words lost. I cried last night for truths unspoken. I cried last night for comfort missing. I cried last night for warmth gone. I cried last night for patience tested. I cried last night for hope fading. I cried last night for strength borrowed. I cried last night for faith thin. I cried last night for calm broken. I cried last night for distance wide. I cried last night for nights heavy. I cried last night for days uncertain. I cried last night for trust fragile. I cried last night for care delayed. I cried last night for peace missing. I cried last night for answers late. I cried last night for silence loud. I cried last night for hearts tired. I cried last night for love waiting. I cried last night for truth near. I cried last night, then listened inside. I cried last night and stayed. Still I cried last night while shadows moved. I cried last night, counting seconds slow. I cried last night, feeling fragile inside. I cried last night when courage paused. I cried last night, holding hope, quiet. I cried last night for kindness missed. I cried last night for moments gentle. I cried last night for laughter silent. I cried last night for care forgotten. I cried last night for warmth needed. I cried last night for patience running. I cried last night for balance lost. I cried last night for promises uncertain. I cried last night for distance closing. I cried last night for trust repairing. I cried last night for peace returning. I cried last night for strength growing. I cried last night for faith resting. I cried last night for calm settling. I cried last night for answers forming. I cried last night for truth emerging. I cried last night, then breathed deep. I cried last night and waited patiently